So I'll try to be reasonably quick about this here. I have got a old Victor acetylene regulator here. I don't know exactly what year this thing is, but model number SR91 and a serial number just over 70,000. And it says Victor San Francisco on the front of it. A slightly newer regulator would have San Francisco, Chicago on it. And holy crap, that's already up in the. Okay, yeah, that's already up in the 740,000. And then a newer regulator yet, the even more modern regulators don't say anything on it other than just Victor equipment. And holy shit, so what are we into there? 3 million. Um, 1, 2, 3, so 2 million on that one. I've actually never looked at the serial numbers on these things before that closely. I wonder if they did actually start at 1 and work their way up. I'll have to check the other regulators that I have, and I don't know, in total I maybe have 10 or so Victor regulators. I'll have to look at the serial numbers on them and see how, if it does look like they're sequential or what. But anyways, the point of this is the fact that this says Victor San Francisco on the front of it lets you know that this is a relatively old regulator. And just the style, I guess, like the fact that it's painted red on the backside. I got this regulator as a pair with another with I bought two of them at the same time. I got an acetylene and an oxygen. This one, unfortunately, has had a flashback into the regulator because people don't use, at least it was common back in the day that people didn't use flashback arresters. I unfortunately have several old regulators that have had a flashback clear into the regulator, which is obviously not a good thing, and it's damaged the gauge, the low pressure gauge on this one here. But anyways, it's amazing how I get off track. But yeah, this one saying just San Francisco on it lets me know that this is a relatively old gauge. If I were to take a shot in the dark, probably from the 40s. And the problem with this thing is that, so had a flashback, and you can see it's nice and sooty and what have you in here, but you know, all this stuff is, you know, the diaphragm is a stainless steel diaphragm and is still in good shape. It's not deformed or nothing. I'm gonna see if I can get the gauge repaired, see if I can send it out to somebody to repair the gauge. But other than that, this thing is just dirty. And personally, I really like the way that it looks as is, with the, you know, very dark oxidation on it. Like, I don't want to clean the outside of the regulator at all. But I'm assuming that because of the flashback, the seat sealing surface is damaged. Like such. And so this seat assembly, I believe Victor calls this entire piece here the seat assembly. But you can see that little sealing surface on there has been damaged. And so it, when you hook it up to a cylinder, it'll just start flowing gas. And it can't shut off the gas flow. I called around. I spent a couple hours on the phone calling around to a couple different places, seeing if I could find parts for this thing because, you know, as you can see, it's otherwise in good shape and I want to fix it up and use it. And I spent a couple hours on the phone, talked to half a dozen, 10 people, something like that, whatever, different shops all around the country. And, you know, it's not like I spent weeks, you know, and called 400 places or whatever, but still, everybody that I talked to on the phone told me, you know, oh, this thing is ancient, you know, you know, that thing's obsolete. You should just go buy a new one. It's not worth fixing the old ones, and you know, blah blah blah, all this bullshit. One guy that I talked to said that he had a Victor book from 1989, and it didn't even mention the SR91 in there, and it's really frustrating to me that that is a very common trend that when you call around asking for parts or service on some of this older stuff that you know, people will, you know, spend half an hour arguing with you on the phone, telling you that you're an idiot and that, you know, you should just throw it away and go buy a new one or whatever. But it's like, well, no, that's bullshit because the only problem with this thing is just that that little seat is fucked up, you know? I mean, the rest of it is, you know, just like hard parts. You know, like there's nothing wrong with the rest of it. And I would imagine that if this had a flashback arrestor on it, that this never would have happened in the first place. But anyways, it's like, you know, I don't let that discourage me. It's like, well, you know, no, I just want to buy this one little part for it and get this thing fixed up and get this sweet old regulator up and working again. And so called around. Everybody said you're an idiot. You're wasting your time. Fucking, you know, don't you know, don't bother me with this stupid bullshit. Essentially, is what they say. I finally got a hold of this guy here. And yeah, like I was saying, a lot of people had never even heard of the SR91 regulator. And oh, fuck, knocking shit over. A lot of people hadn't even heard of it, and finally got a hold of this guy here, and sounds like a really cool old timer over the phone. He was like, "Oh yeah, yeah, I know those things," and he's like, "Okay, so you know, is it one of the older ones that says San Francisco with the red paint on the back of it?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure enough," and he was asking, you know, if it's got a hex on the seat assembly here, and he's like, "Well, oh shit, okay, no worries, I got parts for that. I'll tape, tape a couple of those little O-rings or whatever you want to call that to the back of a business card and drop it in the mail for you." And so I was very, very happy to finally get a hold of someone who, for one, knew what I was talking about, but also two, that was willing to help out and send over some parts. So I have not dug into this yet, and I have never dug into one of these things before. I would assume that just that little nut on the end of there would spin off. But I, of course, really do not want to damage anything. Oh, actually, it looks like this here unthreads. Like such. God, those are some tiny threads. Anyways, I'll pause it and dick around with this thing for a second. And so, as gently as reasonably possible, I had to essentially excavate the old gasket that was out of there. And then I just very lightly cleaned up the end of it with a wire wheel. Um, and so, take one of these guys here. And that does not appear to be directional. Jeez, that's going to be a tight fit. Okay, I'm going to have to fiddle fart with this. Alright, that just took a little patience and a small little hook and screwdriver, and I just very carefully kind of rolled it into place. But I would say that looks pretty good. Just cracks me up. That looks probably as good as it did back in 1942 or whenever. Yeah, little patience and getting the right guy on the phone to send you the right part. And we might just be in business here. So, like I said, everything else looks really good in the regulator here. So I'm not going to fuck with anything else for the moment. I'm not going to hook it up and actually use it right now because I got other shit that I need to be doing at the moment. But I'm sure I have complete confidence that that will work just fine. And be good to go because, I mean, you know, shit, like I said, there's just not really anything else to these things. And it's interesting, this one here does not actually use an O-ring on it. It's just the diaphragm onto the brass is all that it is. And yeah, I'll clean up the internals on it later. Um, these are the gauges that came off of it, and you can see like the glass is in kind of rough shape there. I do actually have some new lenses for it, but I can't unthread this collar on the end of it. But I actually didn't notice it until just making this video right now. But on the gauge here, you know, Victor Equipment, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Chicago. The low pressure doesn't say anything, but you can see the low pressure gauge has been wrapped all the way around and pegged on the other side of the peg there. Just realized everything I've been doing for you has been sideways. And here's the oxygen. Victor Equipment, San Francisco, Los Angeles. Oops. Same thing, San Francisco, Los Angeles. This was the oxygen that I got with it. I don't know, especially now looking at the gauges, that there's not Chicago on this one here. Well, that one makes sense because the acetylene is presumably older. This one has a serial number of 90,000. Yeah, 70,000 on the acetylene. But and everything looks to be just fine with the gauges. The glass is in much better shape and what have you. I have actually used the oxygen and the oxygen works just fine, other than, the grease and what have you that was on like the hand wheel here, of course, dried up decades ago. So that just needs to be taken apart and get a quick clean as well too. Oh yeah, and this one is painted green on the backside. But yeah, I wonder if this was the original oxygen that went with it, because it looks just like it, and the patina, if we will, is looks identical on both of these, but the oxygen here is 20,000 serial numbers higher. So don't know if that makes sense or not. But yeah. Anyways, somebody's looking for some parts for old torches or regulators or what have you, give this guy a call. He was very helpful.